All right, everyone, welcome back in. It's another episode of Bleav in Vikings, and I'm your host, Mike Wobshaw. The show is for today, Friday, September 20th. We're just a couple of days in front of the Vikings' next game, and that's against the Houston Texans. The game will be Sunday at noon from US Bank Stadium. We are going to preview that game and maybe even get into some predictions with a special guest today. It's going to be Patrick Creighton, who joins Bleav in Vikings. More on him and with him in a moment. But first, Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. Bet Online has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. When the game's over, head on over to their online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of their over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Bet Online, the game starts here. We're bringing in Patrick Creighton right now. Excited to talk to him about the Vikings and the Houston Texans. Patrick is host of the Bleav in Texans podcast on the Bleav Network, but also the host of Area 45, his weeknight radio show on Sports Radio 610 in Houston. Hello, Patrick. Thank you for your time. I'm sure it's been a busy week for you, but we're looking forward to talking Vikings and Texans with you.
Hey, man, happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So in Minnesota, Patrick, we have a 2-0 football team that has a fan base who heard all month when JJ McCarthy got hurt that their season was shot and they'd have to wait till next season. Now they're 2-0 and they're super excited. So can you guess how they felt when the opening line came out for Vikings Texans and their team was once again a home underdog against another opponent?
Well, I'll tell you what, if I'm a fan of the Vikings, I'm feeling really damn good right now because, like you said, my season was supposed to be over. I had to trust my offense to Sam Darnold. And, a guy who was very hyped coming out of college was, very talented player, then wound up in an awful situation in the swamps of Jersey and bounced around the league and has kind of now finally found a home in Minnesota. And he played very well the first 2 weeks. And I think that based on, you don't need Sam Darnold to be a world beater. You just need him to I'm going to use a word that quarterbacks hate, game manager, right? Just run the offense and let your defense do its thing. Defense is really good. And if you're a Vikings fan and you're 2-0 and nobody expects you to be 2-0, you didn't expect you to be 2-0. Don't lie. You know it's true. You didn't know you were going to be 2-0. You're 2-0, man. Revel in that. Be happy in that, man. Get the dogs and burgers on the brats on the grill. Let's crack the beers and be excited about your football team. There is no rule against being excited about your football team, so drink it up.
That's right. Totally agree with you. And you look at the way they did it, Patrick. It was, against Daniel Jones and the Giants in week 1, and people can poo-poo that. I don't think you can. It's a road win in the NFL. As well as I do, those are tough to come by. But then, you do it to San Francisco in week 2, and I think the feeling of confidence is certainly understandable. And now it's, they're hearing, well, now let's see if like the Texans are the true test. Like, the Niners didn't have McCaffrey, but now the Texans are the true test. But now it's like, they don't have Joe Mixon and blah, blah, blah. So, this is the NFL. Players come and they go. They're injured and they're healthy. You're right. You don't ever apologize for a win, no matter how you get it, whether you're eking one out against the Colts and eking one out against the Bears, which the Texans have done, or you're blowing teams away. It doesn't matter. They all count the same. This is a week-to-week league,
Yeah. People say, oh, well, you didn't blow this team out or you snuck one by. It doesn't matter. Right? As you said, you never apologize for a win in the NFL. The Vikings beat up an awful Giants team. I'm from New York. I grew up a Giants fan. They stink. Okay, they've had like 2 winning seasons since their last Super Bowl season. It's over a decade. They freaking stink. Their owner's a doofus. The GM's a doofus. The coach doesn't have a whole lot to work with. The quarterback stinks. All right, the Giants stink. But that doesn't mean they say, oh, well, you'll be. So what? You went on the road. You got to win. That shink. All right. You brought Niners came in. That's a really good San Francisco 49ers team. All right. They didn't have Christian McCaffrey. Did that matter for them in week 1? Or, did they just run the ball all over the place anyway? No. And they still had, Brandon Ayuk, and they still had George Kittle, and they had Deebo Samuel for most of that game. And they played terrific defense, and they got a win. chink down again. So every time you get to put a pink in the win column, you take it. You don't apologize for that. What happens when you got? Justin Jefferson's playing with a bum quad, and Jordan Addison may not play this week. So it's not like the Texans are going to go, well, we beat the Vikings, but no, hey, we got to win. We got to win. If the Vikings get a win, you don't go, well, they didn't have Joe Mixon. You're like, no, we got to win. And I don't buy this is the true test for the Vikings. No, they got that was a legitimate test last week against the San Francisco 49ers. The test for them this week is, can you beat a really good team in your conference? A team that if you're looking at going to the postseason, you might have at some point you're going to have to beat a team like that. You beat that team. Now, can you keep that energy level the same the following week, or is there going to be a letdown? Because that is something we see all the time in the NFL. Teams get a big win one week, and then the next week they're flat as a board. So can the Vikings come out with that same intensity on defense? Can they come out and be as efficient on offense? Can they come out that way, or are they going to be a little flat because they're coming off a really big win, which, look, you should be excited. You should be happy. That's a great win. That is a great win, okay? If this was college football, you got that one highlighted and circled, that when you go to the CFP committee, dude, we beat Alabama. Here they are. Here it is. So that's a terrific win for the Vikings last week. This would be another terrific win. You beat the Niners and the Texans back-to-back weeks. That's an accomplishment. That tells you your team is really going in the right direction. You're going to be a formidable team in the division this year.
Yeah, well stated. Interesting storyline here in this matchup, Patrick, is the back and forth, the former Texans who are Vikings, the former Vikings who are Texans. So you got Danielle Hunter, you got Jonathan Grenard, you got Blake Cashman, you have Cam Akers, Stephon Diggs, up and down the board, a whole bunch of former Texans who are Vikings and vice versa. Of that crew, who have you talked about the most this week on your show or in appearances you make? Who are some key players in this matchup that used to play for the other team that you're looking forward to seeing on Sunday?
Well, look, everybody's talking about Stephon Diggs. His first time coming back to Minnesota since the Vikings traded him to Buffalo. So everybody wants to make that a big deal. It's 5 years ago, but everyone wants to make that a big deal. And even Steph has been nothing but complimentary towards his time in Minnesota. This is the team that drafted him in the 5th round. They took the chance on him. And look, he rewarded them because he played like an absolute star for them, especially his last 2 years in Minnesota. He was phenomenal. Yeah. And look, sometimes in the NFL, teams have to make financial decisions where, look, we can't pay everybody. And unfortunately, they decided they couldn't pay him. So he wound up going to Buffalo, where he balled out for the Buffalo Bills for 4 years. Hell, he made a quarterback out of Josh Allen. So I'm not – I don't think it should be as big a deal, but because of the name brand value. To me, Danielle Hunter played his whole career in Minnesota, and he's one of their – near the top of the leaderboard in career sacks. Danielle Hunter – who was replaced by, say, the younger model in John Grenard. I think this is a bigger deal for Danielle Hunter, who had a really good game last week against the Bears with a sack and a half. I feel like it's a bigger deal for him than it would be for Stephon Diggs, who's now 5 years removed. I think it's between Grenard and Cashman. I think Cashman should be a little up for this because Cash is a guy who, look, you see, he's got talent. And he's a terrific cover linebacker, which is a very rare commodity in the NFL, to have a guy who can go sideline to sideline and cover as well as Cash does. He is a guy who has been injured a lot in his career. Last year was finally healthy and showed you what he could do, in the starting lineup over the course of a full season. He's off to a great start this year. I have no ill will for Blake Cashman. He's the kind of guy you root for, a guy who, wasn't a high draft pick, who busted his butt on special teams, finally got a shot to start, capitalized on it, made the most of it, was a great player for your team. I want him to be a terrific player for the Vikings, and I hope he gets as much money as possible. I feel like that for most players. Like, I want players to get paid. Yeah. I want them to be successful. I just want them to not make that one tackle that changes the game. You know what I mean? Because, we're a little visted differently here in Houston than you are in Minnesota. But I think it's a big deal for Cash because this is a guy who got his big contract, was probably never expected to get a big contract.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's got one, and you can't help but root for those guys.
Yeah, and he's a Minnesota native too, Patrick. Eden Prairie, Minnesota, Golden Gopher, and so the way he played last week in San Francisco, I think he had 13 tackles, he had a pick, or he had a sack, and a 3 pass deflections. So he was all over the field. So it was really sort of a get to know you game for Vikings fans and Blake Cashman. You're right on Danielle Hunter, 3rd all-time in sacks in Vikings history, which is saying something for an organization that had John Randall and Chris Dolman and the Purple People Eaters and Jared Allen. And so I think from a matchup and a impacting the game standpoint, Danielle Hunter has got to be as high as anyone in this matchup. And the Vikings offensive tackles, left tackle Christian Darrisaw, right tackle Brian O'Neill, every single week, Patrick, we've talked about big matchup for those guys, because with the Giants, who you're familiar with, it was Kayvon Thibodeau and it was Brian Burns. Last week it was Bosa and Leonard Floyd, and now this week it's another good tandem in Danielle Hunter and then Will Anderson. Tell us about Will Anderson, because Vikings fans are going to be familiar with Hunter because he played here for 7-8 seasons. Will Anderson, what are we looking at with him? What Vikings got their hands full with this player?
He is the reigning defensive rookie of the year.
Mm-hmm.
He set the Texans rookie sack record last year. Will Anderson gets in the backfield. He is extremely quick, fast off the ball, quick first move. He gets into the backfield. He's a disruptor. He will get tackles for loss. You have to account for him. If you have him in a one-on-one matchup, you're going to lose. Mm-hmm. You can't one-on-one him. He's going to win those matchups. You're going to have to find a way either to double him or to have a chip. Whether you're chipping him with a tight end, you're chipping him with a running back, you're going to have to give different looks to him, because if they try to go one-on-one straight up with him the whole game, he's going to make some plays that are going to turn the game. He's that kind of a player, and that guy gets better with each game. He probably hasn't scratched. All right, let me reverse that. He hasn't reached his potential yet. He's probably maybe 65% of the player he can be. He just has tremendous athletic ability. He's very strong. And like I said, the speed for him, the kind of speed that he possesses is a problem for anyone trying to block him. He's incredibly fast.
Yeah. Let's talk about your quarterback in Houston, CJ Stroud. And I want to do it initially from the standpoint of blitzing him and pressuring him, and then you can kind of take it from there. And the reason I want to frame it that way is because the Vikings have Brian Flores as their defensive coordinator, and the Vikings led the NFL in blitz frequency last season. And although they've decreased it this season, they're still 5th highest in blitz frequency. When the Vikings blitz, they lead the league in pressures, sacks, and the whole thing. They're still getting pressure when they choose to come with a 4-man rush. But Flores, I think it's in his blood. He likes to pressure and blitz. CJ Stroud, very good against the blitz. I think his passer rating is like 125. So how do you put CJ Stroud on a bad game? Because I don't see many bad games on his record.
Look, CJ is tremendous. Again, his ability to not just read pre-snap, but to make reads while a play is developing. You might say he's already one of the 5 best in the league at doing that, and he's 2 games into his 2nd season. He's tremendous ability to process information extremely fast and know where to go with the football. That being said, even the greatest quarterbacks, the way to get them is up the middle. And what we've seen from the Texans over the first 2 games is that teams with a lot of movement, pre-snap, and stunting to come up the middle have gotten pressure on the Texans center. So week 1, Juice Scrubs, last week, Jared Patterson. You can get pressure up the middle because those guys, they're both second-year players, both who missed half of their rookie seasons with injuries. Those 2 guys have struggled with picking up stunts and handling different movements and what their responsibilities are. So teams have been able to come right up the middle on CJ Stroud. And that is extremely difficult to deal with because the player's in your face, as everything's, funneling around you, you don't have anywhere to step up to. So now you have to get out top and around in order to buy time. And that's, look, CJ has the kind of athletic ability to do that, but it also at that point turns everything into a scramble drill. CJ is really good at scramble drill, but what we've also seen is that, well, Nico Collins is really good in scramble drill. They haven't necessarily gotten everybody else quite on the same page. You know, Stroud and Nico almost have like a Bluetooth connection where they just know where they're going to be at all times. But that hasn't manifested itself quite the same way with everybody else this season as yet. He had that kind of connection with Tank Dell last year before Dell ultimately had the season-ending injury. But so far this year, they haven't had that connection, although Dell should have had a touchdown last week. CJ hit him in the hands with a pass over the middle where if he caught it, he's gone. It went through his hands and hit him in the face. So that's the kind of pass that would have been 6. But, you know, Tank hasn't. I think that is something where the Texans need to, you know, get that scramble drill down. But when you're trying to get a quarterback off his game, getting pressure up the middle, number one way to do that. And so far, the Texans at the center position, they've struggled in pass protection so far this year.
That's interesting. When I listen to you talk about that, I think the Vikings have done a great job of pressuring the quarterback this season. It's come from everywhere, but they're definitely strong on the edges with Andrew Van Ginkel, with John Grenard. Dallas Turner's not going to play in this game. And then with a guy named Patrick Jones II, who actually leads them in sacks with 4. So it's primarily from edge players. So it'll be interesting to see that cat and mouse, that chess match between Bobby Slowick then and Brian Flores to see where that pressure comes from and how they respond. The scramble drill is interesting that you term it that way. It's hard to practice that, but it's important to be good at that, right? Because how many times do we see quarterbacks get flushed out of the pocket? The defense thinks it's one, but the quarterback buys time and makes a play, catching a receiver who's come uncovered because the quarterback wasn't taken to the ground. I think the Vikings corners are benefiting from great pressure from the pass rush. I don't think that they've necessarily sat in coverage and have been great. So that's interesting, Patrick, because this is definitely the best trio of receivers the Vikings have faced. So if the Vikings can't get Stroud to the ground, extending plays, I think, is going to really hurt them.
And look, the Vikings have a really good secondary. Let's not. I mean, as much as the Texans have, you know, a top wide receiver trio, the Vikings have an excellent secondary. And when you get into scramble drill, now it's just find a man and match up, right? It's almost it's the defensive backfield equivalent of hats on hats. Find a guy and stick him. And it's just not letting somebody, whether it's a Nico Collins or a Tank Dell or a Stephon Diggs, somebody just find a gap where they're wide open, because CJ Stroud has the arm talent to throw across his body and be accurate and have enough zip on the ball that it's not going to, like, usually when you see a quarterback, you know, rolling to his right and then he throws back across the left, you're like, that's a pick.
Yep.
Yet not with CJ Stroud.
Yeah.
He has enough arm talent where he's throwing that ball with the kind of velocity and the kind of accuracy where he's able to throw it across his body and still deliver the football. It's there's so few guys in the league who can do that, and CJ's one of them.
Go ahead.
Just the idea of, in order to, yes, of course they're benefiting from pressure. Every defensive secondary benefits from pressure. It's damn near impossible to cover guys 5-6 seconds. You can't. Yeah. So when you get into scramble drill, it's really just, hey, there's more of us than there are of them. Identify a guy and stick him. And it's just being disciplined in that, hey, I need to find whoever the closest guy is to me and not let this guy be free.
Yep. Last thing here, couple of questions on more on the Houston offense. Bobby Slowick, is he like Kevin O'Connell, head coach, but calls the plays? He understands we need balance, run pass. The Vikings went out and signed Aaron Jones to sort of strengthen the running game. But like Kevin O'Connell can't help himself. He wants to throw the ball, right? And who wouldn't? You got Addison and Jefferson and Hockenson, and he's had Cousins up until this season. So like, why wouldn't you? Is that how Bobby is too? Or is Bobby a little more committed to run pass equal distribution? What's sort of the identity of the offense from a play calling standpoint?
Well, so far this year, they haven't necessarily nailed it down one way, right? So week one, they wanted to throw the ball more. The line wasn't giving Stroud protection. but they were running the ball with a lot of efficiency against the Colts. So the second half, it turned into the Joe Mixon show, where they made an adjustment, understanding, hey, we're running the ball effectively. Let's just pound it on them because they're not stopping it.
Mm-hmm.
Last week, they did not run the ball effectively, and they needed CJ Stroud to thread some needles under a lot of pressure in order to win that game. So if you look at last year, this was a very pass-heavy team because they couldn't run the ball. I mean, they had 17 games. I think they ran the ball well in 3 of them. So this team did not run block well at all last year. This year, they've been better. They've had one really good game, but it's hard to judge, okay, hey, they ran the ball over Indianapolis. Well, last week, Indianapolis got road graded again. So maybe their run defense isn't quite where it needs to be just quite yet, whereas the Bears are a much more formidable team against the run. So from that point of view, I think when you're considering Joe Mixon not going to play, Dameon Pierce not going to play, Cam Akers is going to start, your backup is probably going to be British Brooks, who's a rookie that use it almost like a fullback. Been a really good special teams guy. Dare Ogunbowale stays in that third down, passing down type role. You might see the Texans, if they are struggling to run the ball, throw the ball a lot more often. But last week, man, Bobby Slowick was making us all pull our hair out again because it was first down run, first down run, first down run, first down run, first down run.
Yeah.
First down run. It's the same run. It's not even like they're switching it up. It's like, okay, it's same play, same. Like at some point, the defense knows what you're going to call. And if you keep when you're running the ball first down nearly every single time, and almost every time between the tackles, no less, you're not fooling anybody. And you're not winning that just on, hey, we're just going to line up and we're going to punch you in the mouth harder than you punch us in the mouth. You don't get anywhere. And then they had Joe Mixon, who, got banged up on a hip drop tackle, hurt his ankle, wound up being out of the game for like the whole third quarter, came back in, played like 7 snaps, then was back out for the rest of the game, not going to play this week because of it. Cam Akers knows the system, right? He knows the outside zone system, and he played really well in training camp. But when you're playing in training camp and you're playing against, preseason games, you're playing against 2s and 3s and wannabes, and now you're going up against the 1s. So it's important for him to be able to maintain that. But I do think that if they find that they can't run it, you got to put the ball in CJ Stroud's hands, and you can utilize short passes to the running backs almost like run plays. So I do think they will make that adjustment. But Bobby Slowick, man, he is committed to the run, and sometimes to his own detriment.
Yeah. Well, I think we saw that. I don't know if you watched Patriots-Jets last night, but I think the Patriots ran into that issue too, where it's like, yeah, Ramondre Stevenson, he's great. I know you're trying to run block and do well, and it worked well the first 2 weeks, but when you can't do it and you fall down 14-0, you're done. You're cooked. It's over. I mean, turn out the lights.
When your quarterback can only throw the ball 8 yards, there's only so much you can do.
And so that's the difference, though, between that situation and the Texans. Is with the Texans, you got CJ Stroud and those 3 nice receivers. I can't wait to see the matchup. It's really good. It's the only one between 2-0 teams on the week 3 board, so should be a lot of fun. This is the first game I picked against the Vikings the first 2 weeks, Patrick. So I
can't do it again, man. You can't do it again.
I can't do it again. So I took them, but I think it's, a field goal game that's going to come down to a play or two. What's your feeling on the outcome?
Well, as I said on the Bleav in Texans podcast, which we recorded earlier today, myself and former Texans wide receiver Cecil Shorts III, I have the Texans 23-20 on a last-minute Kaimi Fairbairn field goal.
Yeah, that's how I see it too. One team's going to win like that. If it comes down to Fairbairn, you're in great shape. The guy does not miss.
He's essentially overtaken Justin Tucker as the best kicker in the league, which is you never thought. Like, at some point, it happens to everybody, right? But Tucker, who is now like 1 for 8 on his last kicks over 50, and Fairbairn drilled one last week from 59 that would have been good from 65. I mean, his leg is crazy, and his accuracy is top notch. And that's the kind of guy where it's like, okay, just pay him. It doesn't just pay him.
That's
because
salt.
Fairbairn is a legitimate weapon in the kicking game because his accuracy and his range. I mean, when it comes to kickers, he's got Steph Curry range. It doesn't matter where they have the ball at the 42. Throw Fairbairn out there because 59, he'll get it. 60, he'll hit it. Anything north of 60, you're always throwing dice. But when you have a guy that from 59 just drills it. It's like, all right, we got a little something other teams don't have.
Yeah, it's a huge weapon. And I think teams are they can get a little too field goal happy when it comes to like shorter field goals. And I always like to joke, it's like teams down by 17, they kick a field goal and it's like, all right, you just need 5 more of those. But when you're, when you're talking about trying to score at the end of a half or a game, or a drive stalls out at the 40, to have that weapon is huge. The Vikings hope they have a guy who can become that, and Will Reichard from Alabama, who's a rookie this year. He also hasn't missed yet, but Fairbairn absolutely is that for the Houston Texans. And I think,
are you calling him Commander Will Reichard?
No, that's not bad. No, but the nickname they came up with, it's Will the Thrill. I don't know. Don't love it. Now, the one that that's a good one. That's a good one. I think they should enlist you for help with nicknames. I think you got something going there. So,
I mean, if his name is Will Reichard and you don't have a Star Trek reference in there, you're doing it wrong.
No, I agree. It's the perfect opportunity. I'll put that into the suggestion box at TCO Performance Center in Eagan the next time I'm around there. So, all right, let's get out of here for now. You're on the Texans by 3. I'm on the Vikings. I think it's a field goal game. It's going to be really close and a fun one to watch. It's Sunday at noon. It was really fun previewing the game with you, Patrick. Make sure for all those listening who like to check out the sports scene, Bleav in Texans with Patrick and Cecil Shorts, former NFL wide receiver. Vikings played against Cecil Shorts a bunch of times. Make sure everyone goes to check that out. But that's going to do it for our episode today of Bleav in Vikings. The Vikings and the Texans Sunday at noon. Our thanks to Patrick Creighton for joining us. Our thanks to all of you for listening. If you aren't already, make sure you like, follow, and subscribe Bleav in Vikings and Bleav in Texans. You can find us wherever you find all your other favorite football podcasts. We are on all the major podcasting platforms as well as YouTube, so check us out there as well. Patrick, that's it for now. Thanks, partner. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me.
All right, that's it for today, everyone. Bleav in Vikings is done for today. Until next time, everyone, remember, keep believing.